Hello out there in Woody Land. I'm Barry Ollman, and I've been involved with the Woody Guthrie Festival for, I think this is my 15th year out of 24. This is the 24th annual. I was a late arrival, but as they say, I got there as quick as I could. And a couple years ago, we had a time slot to fill in Okemah at the festival, and I thought, well, why don't we do a little talk about songwriting, because we have so many great songwriters hanging around, and it's all of our favorite topic, and we just thought, let's do it, see what happens. So actually I asked Jaimee and a few others, John Cooper and Tim Easton, and who else was on it? Spacing. Anyway, it was lovely and people really enjoyed it. So we thought last year, because none of us made it to Okemah, we thought we'd do it virtually, and that was also really fun and really just felt like a rich thing to do. And that was with Mary Gaucher and Louis Perez from Los Lobos, and our friend Sunu, who's with us right here. Wave your hand, Sunu. Sunu Kodumthara is a professor of history and women's studies at Oklahoma.
At Southwestern
Oklahoma State, I'm sorry. And along with Sunu, we have Jaimee Harris, who's a friend of mine from WoodyFest, who, when we met, Jimmy Lefebvre, our dear departed friend, told me that Jaimee Harris is the best singer in Austin. You've got to get to know her. You've got to listen. And he said, see if you can get her to sing on one of your records, to anything, just, she's the best. So I paid attention immediately and have not been disappointed. It's been great watching Jaimee build her career and write really powerful music. And great singer, great guitar players, just has so much going on. Really lovely. Thanks for being here with us, Jaimee.
Oh, thanks. I'm honored to be here. Thank you, Barry.
Yeah. And then Glen Hansard is with us from somewhere in the heart of France, in a barn that he helped build this very day. Wow. None of the rest of us can say that, I don't think.
Oh, come on.
Glen is a singer in the long tradition of great Irish singers, who just touch our hearts and inspire. And, he made a movie or two and won an Oscar and all kinds of stuff, but he just keeps making beautiful music that moves me and so many. So thank you for being with us, Glen.
Thank you, Barry. Thanks so much. It's lovely to be here.
Great. So I kept thinking, what do we really want to talk about? Because the world has changed so much in the last year, 2 years, 5 years, 100 years. It's quite a moment we're in. And, I never, I don't know, I guess I always feel pleasantly surprised at how the art that we love and music and literature reflects what's going on. And, I just can't help but feel that this is a time when a lot of soul searching is going on, which really can make for powerful music. Woody Guthrie, who many of you watching are pretty familiar with, maybe not all of you. He wrote about everything. He really did. I mean, he wrote 3,000 songs, so they are about everything. He wrote about flying saucers, and he wrote about prisoners. He wrote about working people and, the forgotten and disenfranchised. He was really tuned into that in a powerful way, and it resonates. And there aren't too many singer-songwriters today that can say they weren't inspired or affected by Woody in some way. I'm a collector of Woody's papers and artwork, and I was looking around today and I dug out this record that Woody made
Wow.
with a bunch of 78s inside, songs like Pretty Boy Floyd and 1913 Massacre and the Ludlow Massacre, about a massacre that happened in Colorado where I am. Union Burying Ground, really writing about what he saw in the paper every day and heard from people on the street. And, I don't know if you've heard about this, but there's a big lie going around. And that big lie makes it so that honesty and truth really sort of stand out today. And to me, it's not like your music or anybody's music has to be telling people what to think or what to feel or anything like that. But I think it's powerful to come from a place of truth and honesty. And like I say, I think it's really nicely contrasted with what's going on in the world today and puts a whole new value on that, that inspiration, that real spark of truth. And, both Jaimee and Glen really nail that for me, really have a strong, just a way of using your voices to touch hearts. I remember last time I was with you, Glen, in Tulsa, I met these kids that drove out from Denver just to see your show at Kane's Ballroom. And they were so blown away. It just knocked them out. So I spent a lot of time with those guys at the Guthrie Center, and I really felt that where you were coming from connected directly. It felt really good. So I don't know. I think I just like to hear you guys explore, what's going on in this world for you today. And some people retreat into, kind of hiding away, and some people reach out and want to communicate. And what's it been like? Who wants to start?
Well, I'll start. I mean, it was interesting what you said about, songs that tell people what to think or feel, because when I think about what doesn't work for me as a listener is when a songwriter is trying to tell me how to think or feel. Because as an addict and a person with a rebellious past, when someone is telling me how to think or feel, that's when I check out. That's when I want to leave the room, because I'm like, you don't know me. You don't tell me how to feel. So what I think, like, you don't know who I am. But so what works for me is when I'm put in the narrator's shoes, right? Which I think what's interesting is about Woody is sometimes there's children gather around, or I think on the Struggle record, there's like a cowboys gather around, I have a tale to tell. And in other instances, he tells a story from, the perspective of different characters where he is the character or he's the narrator. And so for me, what I've been doing during the pandemic is I've been working a lot on editing songs more than starting songs. I found it really challenging to begin something new, but I had a whole pile of songs that really started when I was in a huge cycle of grief. It was, during the time that Jimmy LaFave, who you mentioned, was passing away, and just other people in my life, were losing. And now it feels like we're globally, at least my perception is, we're under this dark cloud of grief. We've lost so many people in wars, obviously, to the pandemic, people that, were lost to other illnesses or accidents that we weren't able to publicly grieve because of the pandemic, which I think particularly in America, we have a hard time dealing with grief and dealing with death and talking about it. And so the subject of songs primarily that I'm working on right now is dealing with grief. And what I had to do in a lot of those situations, Some were songs that were formed when I started writing them, maybe 2016, 2017, and I didn't have enough life experience to finish them honestly. So I had to wait, we talked about what is, the mystery of songwriting. And sometimes for me, it's just a waiting game, to really know and to not rush something before I can truly honor what the song that's trying to come through is trying to do. And so one of the songs that I worked on for this record is called Boomerang Town. It's sort of about where I grew up, which is in Waco, Texas. And it actually came about because I got asked at the 4th of July a few years ago to sing a verse of This Land Is Your Land. And the songwriter asked, which verse do you want? And I said, I want the steeple verse, in the shadow of the steeple, I saw my people. And this guy said, songwriter, he said, I always thought that Woody really got it wrong with that verse. And that was surprising to me because one, the songwriter had been to Truett, was a member of Truett Seminary, which is the seminary that cast a shadow over the Caritas Relief Office on the other side of I-35 where I grew up. And I've been trying to write a song about where I grew up for a long time because I think a lot of what I deal with is from that environment. And so, but I realized through that process that I wasn't the right narrator to tell that story. I tried it from the perspective of a waitress that works at a diner in Crawford, Texas, where there are bush cutouts everywhere. I tried it from the perspective of a veteran that's just returned from Iraq. And it turns out the best perspective to tell that story from, the one that generated the most empathy, was from behind the eyes of a 17-year-old kid that works at Walmart and has knocked up his girlfriend. So what fascinates me about Woody is, how he was effectively able to do that. Come gather round, children, a story I will tell. And when he made decisions to choose to tell the story from behind a narrator's perspective. And that's what I've been up to during the pandemic, is just trying to listen and figure out what perspective is going to generate the most empathy. And for me as a songwriter, I feel like that I know that's happening when I cry, when I write the song.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Really. Glenn, what's been some of your experience? I know you have a lot of different kinds of projects in the works. And
Well, if I'm being honest, and Jaimee, thank you for that. It's really great to hear. Just really great to hear that, somebody who's really, editing songs rather than trying to kind of start new ones. It's a really interesting idea and concept. And I'm very honest for the times, because I don't find these times very creative personally. Although I have been working, and I've been working on different. I was working on a movie project, getting songs written and writing for a character. So again, it's quite interesting to hear Woody speak about come gather around, that story I will tell, that he was writing from different characters, different narrators, and putting himself in different shoes. It's I have found this time for me deeply uninspiring, and part of what it is, I've kind of realized, is that I'm a performer, every bit, if not more, than I am a writer. I'm a performer. I perform music. That's what I've always done. My first instinct was to busk. It was always my first instinct was to perform, not to write. Writing came out of performing, but it was always playing to people, and somehow conjuring is the wrong word, but summoning something when you perform, connecting with people, and seeing what happened with the energy that rose up out of that connection. And I found this time to be a little bit. It's been suffocating. I've seen a lot of very good friends, as you guys have, go down and really struggle with identity, really struggle with. I've been wondering during this time why my instincts aren't working, because my instincts aren't working right now. I get a kind of a sense of things, but my instincts aren't right. My instincts aren't functioning, and I'm like, well, how am I so cut off from my instincts? Usually, I'm so good with that. Usually, I'm so good at knowing where I'm going or knowing what I'm doing next, and right now, I can't get a handle on it. And the only thing I can put it down to, and I could be wrong with that too, is just that I'm like a plant that's been cut off from its nourishment. I don't have the thread of life. The thing that feeds me is not there. I haven't played a concert in, so what is it? What is a performer without a gig? What is a performer without an audience? What happens to them? Where do they go? These are interesting questions for me, and I've been kind of saved in that I've been writing songs for characters in a movie, or writing songs for a character in a TV show maybe, and sort of trying to get my head around that. And it's been good because it's kept my hand warm. It's kept my writing hand warm. I've kind of stayed in the game of writing, but I don't feel like I'm doing what I love doing, which is playing, and that's I don't trust my instincts right now. So I'm here with a theater group. I'm making music for a theater show, and I'm just trying to keep my hand in playing and collaborating and being part of something that, because otherwise I'm going to go down into a big deep me hole, and it's gonna, it's not a good. It's my head is a bad neighborhood. Every time I go there, I get beaten up. It. So it's just trying to keep your hands busy so your heart can float. That's kind of where I'm trying to stay. Is just keep the hands busy so that I'm not overthinking.
Really beautiful. I can relate.
Yeah.
Whew. Sunu,
Yeah,
do you have any thoughts about, I'm sorry, but in some ways, these times are very different from all other times. And in some times, in some ways, maybe not so much.
I have to say, the overwhelming sense of, I want to say there's it's a sense of panic, right? Like what do I do? Who am I now? Because there is a sense that you've lost identity and purpose, and it's consistent throughout. It's not just the pandemic. It's in times of war. It's in times of extreme poverty. It's in times of extreme economic conditions. Things that push you to the extreme, whatever they are, will always cause this question of, what do I do? Who am I in these circumstances? And what is fascinating, at least to me, is that what art has always done consistently, whether we're talking about music or whether we're talking about drawings or poetry or literature, is that it has always pointed to the most sincere and genuine and vulnerable parts of humanity. You can see resistance, you can see the kindness, you can see sorrow, you can see grief, you can see love, you can see it in its purest forms. But at the same time, you can also see the struggle there of trying to figure out, well, wait a second, is this who I really am? Is this really what I want to say? Because it's either in the art or it's going to be in someone's diary entry. When the pandemic first started last year, on my social media, one of the things I encouraged people to do was just write whatever they wanted to write, but just write about what they were feeling, how they were processing what they were going through, because it was not normal, right? It was the extreme. You are in quarantine and nothing is normal. You have to shop from home, you've got to work from home, or you're stuck in your room. You can't see other human beings. You can't socialize the same way. And even though everything's on Zoom, this is not the same thing as community, right? And I saw these, Glenn was pointing out wanting to perform for people, and I saw these performances via social media and things like that, and that was fine. But social media performances are not the same as actually going to a concert. I like being in the room. I like the energy of being in the room. I like actually being at a festival, right? And so I encourage people to write about that in the rawest, truest form, because what historians end up learning about is what actually happens during these extremes. That's where people are the most honest and the most vulnerable. Because
Mm.
in newspapers and in statistics, you'll get facts and figures and you'll get politicians' quotes, and that's fine and dandy for whatever. But it's in the diaries that you're going to get what people are actually feeling and what they're actually going through. And
Yeah.
that's when you're going to know, I hate it here. I don't know who I am here. I don't know what
Mm.
I'm doing in this moment.
Mm.
And I think that's the real struggle of especially of artists who need to connect
Mm.
and need to be able to to talk about what this experience has been and share that with people.
Really.
Yeah. Well said. There's a lovely saying in an Irish in the Irish tradition of songwriting. There's a lovely saying about, if you want to know what happened, refer to the history books. If you want to know how it felt, listen to the songs.
Yeah.
And it's true. There's definitely you're right to encourage people to speak about the uncomfortable stuff of this time, because it is a lot of people are just trying to hang on, and I really get that. I really get that, trying to hang on to positivity. But there's a lot of honesty to report also, it's just quite tough.
Mm. It's almost like a form of sensory deprivation. We're all cut off from the routine that we had going called life, that we couldn't really identify because we had no distance from it.
Yeah.
And I keep thinking of musical chairs. We're all running around the room, and when the music stops, who's got a chair? Who doesn't have a chair?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and we can't know what other people are going through. We meet someone, you form an opinion. We have no idea really what's behind the mask. And I don't mean face mask. So to me, this is so much of the struggle of life today, is getting real in our hearts and shedding that artifice of this, especially with social media, this happy personality, everything's working out for me, I'm doing great. How are you? Well, I feel like crap, but I don't want to say that to a million people.
Sure.
And you enter art, where's the art? And, some people, we have a friend, Grant Peoples, who says, make art, people. There's always something there to be able to reflect what's happening. What do you think, Jaimee?
I'm so sorry, Barry. I'm always fascinated though. And again, this is coming from someone who is really just a fan and an observer, but I'm always fascinated at the ability of artists who find a way, miraculously find a way in these extreme circumstances, again, whatever they may be, to be able to tap into something and express that form of resistance, express that form of grief, whatever. I always, whether we're talking about, like, a perfect example is all of the art that comes out during the Holocaust. How do you channel that creativity? It is beyond me. But whether we're talking about the pandemic or the depression or war or whatever, to be able to find that pocket within yourself and channel that creativity. I have to say, I'm always in awe of anyone who can manage that and use that as a way to just express their own grief or their own anger or whatever they're feeling in that moment.
I think I have a response to, oh, Glenn, go ahead.
No, please.
I think my response to that is that I was thinking about what you said with, the diary writing and all of that. It's like, when it comes down to, when I'm facing a blank page, or if I'm sitting down inspired to write, it's not because I'm thinking this song is actually, it will most likely definitely screw it up if I think in the way of this song is going to go out in the world and it is going to comfort those who are hurting. If I insert my will into that song, it's likely going to be garbage. That's my experience for me as the writer, right? So a lot of times, honestly, it's born out of a selfish, perhaps, need to survive. Like with someone with depression and anxiety and honestly, oddly, a lot of, social skills stuff. I feel my belief about myself is that I'm usually not able to articulate how I feel to other people with my speaking words. But there's something about getting into it with art that allows me to uncover whatever is going on inside of me that I don't understand. And my experience is that, there are people that make wonderful art, and with its purpose being to dance and to escape from the nightmare situation that, I might be dealing with. That is not the art that I make. I make art to check in. If you want to escape, you are not going to have the time of your life listening to Jaimee Harris. But my motivation, because a lot of what, and I've been writing songs for a long time, but I'm still in the stage of writing through stuff that is stuck inside of me. And my experience of that is that I share that, and then somebody says, me too. Right? And then that makes me feel less alone and gives me, as someone with depression and just who might I might lock myself in the house, but being able to hear that me too goes, oh, okay, I'm not alone. And it helps me to survive, to hold on.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of maybe what happens, in times of darkness is that it's not, I'm going to duct tape hope onto this, or I'm going to paint this thing and hope that people respond to it. It's just that it's like a need. It's a need inside of the artist. At least that's my experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All we have is our truth, and if our truth is ugly, that's fine. If our truth is beautiful, that's fine. But you're right. It's all we got, isn't it? It's just to if we can come at it with sincerity, not some false sincerity, but the real stuff, Hello, dogs. Hello. That if we can just come at what we're doing with a solid sense of this is just born out of what's coming right now, then I think we're going to be safe. Whatever it is, nobody's immune to life, and everybody. I took great comfort years ago. Someone said to me, all your heroes, all those people, they have to get up in the morning. Joni Mitchell, she has to get up, she has to put cold water on her face, she has to put her clothes on, and she has to start her day just like you do. And it kind of gave me great comfort, because somehow there was this notion that there are certain people who just sort of live in this, where everything's just kind of, they just float through life, whereas it doesn't true.
Yeah. I think back to some of the the history of folk music, and which is really just people's songs. This is, some of them stick and find a place into the, people's consciousness. And, so many of the old British ballads were just, murder and death, and, really some awful stories, and they were heavy, but they were intriguing to people because maybe it plays to the subconscious. It just gets in there. And allows you to identify your fears and just like Jaimee said, as Jaimee said, you know, I'm not alone, me too. I think there's a lot to that because, you know, in times such as these, you know, it's very easy to hide away and not try to, you know, be out there in any sense of the word because it's, you know, has it been safe? Well, we haven't known. And it's been kind of a scary moment. And, you know, here we are with the same needs we've ever had.
Mhm.
But there's this sensory deprivation that makes us, you know, really confront a lot of dark stuff, a lot of hopeful stuff, because the hope is there too. You know, it's not, to me, it's not all dark. It's, you know, I don't know. Maybe that's my nature. I have this, I'm grateful to have this feeling of hopefulness, even when it looks like hell out there. And, you know, maybe it's easily mistaken for naivete and, or not. Or maybe, you know, without hope, you know, Woody said, people are just hoping machines. And I think he meant it. You know, he felt that, you know, the adversity that he lived with, you know, the shadow of Huntington's disease over him his whole life, thinking his mother was mentally ill, but she really had one of the very worst diseases known to human beings. And Woody knew that that could be, oh, did we lose? Oh, there you are.
I'm back.
You know, that was a persistent, understandably persistent fear in Woody's life through his whole adult life. And during that time, he wrote Take You for a Ride in My Car. I mean, he wrote My Daddy Rides That Ship in the Sky, which his sister Mary Jo always told me was her favorite song of Woody's. And, you know, which is a song that just lets one kid tell another kid how great his parents are. You know, your dad does this and your dad keeps him, my dad's the pilot and your dad keeps him up in the sky because he's the mechanic. And, you know, to me, very touching stuff that reminds me that, you know, we're not living in a world that is all politics, all the BS of politics. It's real lives.
It struck me a lot.
Because I do need to, I just wonder now that I don't know where we are in the matrix here of the pandemic, but because it does seem a little weird, right? It's not normal. I mean, the pandemic is still going on and, you know, but then at the same time, people are still behaving as if things are normal. I don't know. It's random and weird, but things are definitely transitioning, right? And it's in this weird middle ground thing. Has that changed things for you guys as artists, as creatives? I mean, Glenn, you're now touring with this artistic group, and Jaimee, you're making plans. Do you guys feel like you are starting to go back to some semblance of a new normal? I mean, what does that feel like for you?
Jaimee?
It doesn't feel normal. You know, we kind of creeped out and did some gigs where, you know, we play small. I play with my partner a lot, and we play small folk rooms. You know, 150, 200 people is kind of our deal. So obviously, a lot of those rooms are, you know, social distance. That initially they were only selling tables, and what I noticed was this It was so beautiful to be in the room with other people again, but we're dealing with 6 tables of 4, so 24 people that are all spaced out, you know? And what I realized of that is that there is something physical about, you know, physically being close to each other in an audience that helps bring us together.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something about just being close to someone you don't know, but you're united because you went out because you love this artist or you love this band, you know, that brings us a certain kind of energy. So we have had to figure out, what can we do to bring people together? And our strategy has been, you know, kind of what we're talking about today is just, we're not going to ignore the fact that we're in a pandemic, that we're dealing with grief, that we've lost people. We're sharing stories about a friend of ours that we lost. And, you know, we're just trying to keep it very real. And we do have plans. It seems like, you know, a lot of the dates that we had in 2020 were rescheduled for this year, and they're sticking. And what's interesting about that for us is that we have had time to sit down and really think about how we want to be on the road and this kind of different intention we want to put behind it. But we have to fulfill the obligations that the versions of us 2 or 3 years ago made, if that makes sense. So that's also a weird space to be in. You know, are we going to fall back into this pattern of just town, you know, not making, you know, more out of it than that? You know, our mutual friend Sam Baker said something where he said, well, by the end of, you know, the last tour I did, I felt like a FedEx delivery guy, where I was running in and just like delivering songs and then on to the next town. And I kind of, you know, I kind of get that. But the position for, you know, my partner who has a really established career is different, you know, than mine. And I went out, I feel more confident being on stage now. I mean, because I went from playing with a 7-piece band to being a solo troubadour, which I realized is a completely different skill set. I've never played alone really like that. And so the pandemic gave me a little bit of time to really like think about how I want to put things in a place, but it is weird. It is weird. I know that, you know, what we're experiencing now is just that it's different in every city. But people are so grateful to be united in this way with music again. And that's positive. And it feels like that's something that we can bring, like Glenn said earlier, like this is what we do. This is what we can offer. And I think, you know, my partner and I are both in recovery. So we look at a lot of things through that lens. It's hard for me not to, you know, like, okay, what, you know, we just think about it every night. We're going to be of service. And if this gets shut down, we're just going to do it as long as we can while it's safe, because people need this too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. It's yeah. For me, I'm out here in France, and I'm in the dead center of France in the Auvergne, which is like the poorest region of France. It's all just farmers and artists, because no artists can live in big cities anymore. So they tend to migrate out into the middle of where they can afford, where it's affordable. And so I'm in a really interesting community here of theater people, and in this region of France, the COVID cases were very, 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 very low. So, you know, nobody in this village got COVID in the last. I think one person did, and they isolated him. So far, touch wood, we've been very fortunate in this part of France. So there is a very relaxed atmosphere. There are gigs happening. People come, some wear masks, some don't. There isn't an anti-vax atmosphere. It's nothing like that. It's more just that this part of the world has been relatively safe, only because there's very few people in this region. I spent a lot of time in Ireland in the pandemic, and in Ireland our cases were really, really strong. The law was really strict. We weren't allowed to leave our houses for a few months, and then it got to like you could go within 2 kilometers of your house, but that was it. So even if you went to the next village, you were in trouble. You know, it was very tough. And so in terms of, I don't want to create a false image here when I say I'm touring with a theater group. We're playing local villages, and what this theater group operates in a very ancient way, in that we gather up. We have a tent, the chapiteau, and we take the tent and we go to villages. We set up the tent and we bring theater to the local people. And it's a very, very old world way of doing things. It's hugely physical, because it takes 2 days to put the tent up. You do a show, you do 2 shows, you take the tent down for 2 days and you move the tent to the next village and you spend 2 days putting it up, you know, so it's very labor intensive, but the reward, spiritually, the reward, it's kind of hard to describe because you're just doing things at a level that just feels like you were saying, Jaimee, that connection. When people come into that tent, you've put up that tent, you built those seats, and they're coming in and they're sitting on them. So the exchange is something very, very powerful, you know, and it made me think a lot about how I tour, you know, because I play theaters in America. Like when I play in America, I'll play theaters. And, you know, like your friend said about the FedEx, you roll in, you set up the gear, you do the show, you roll out, and you wake up in the next city, you know, and you do the same thing that night. And when I toured America the last time, I think it may have coincided with some kind of midlife moment for me because I'm 51 now. So I would have toured America when I was 49 last. And I really, really hit a wall. I felt an incredibly divided country. Barry, I met you on that tour. We were talking on that tour. I met a very, very, actually, in fact, Denver was probably the lowest spot for me, where I was just really, really struggling with this system doesn't work. The whole thing of like, so the venue has this art, has me tonight. It has, you know, it has another artist tomorrow. It has another artist, like just this kind of, I just thought to myself, and I could feel a fatigue in the audiences as well, that this system doesn't work. And so in a kind of a funny kind of a way, the pandemic has cleared the boards a bit. And, you know, it is sad to see a lot of small businesses not survive the pandemic. In the same way, I feel a lot of smaller artists won't necessarily, or a lot of smaller artists will survive. And a lot of the bigger ones just won't know how to downsize, because for a lot of people, it's very, very difficult concept to adjust, because their system is such that they're employing so many people. I'm like you, Jaimee, I can go out with the guitar. So I'm very lucky, you know, and I know how to do that. That's what I used to do. I found myself going busking recently just to keep my hand in the game. I just wanted to play music. And so I really know what you mean. And that relationship, whatever it is, that simple relationship with, you play your song, we just have to try to retain the truth. Because what this exposes is, if you're just in it to maintain a lifestyle, if you're just in music to maintain a lifestyle, or you're in a band because it's cool, or you're, you know, those people aren't going to survive this, because it's just going to be too uncomfortable. So I think what's going to happen, in a funny kind of a way, this will have a massive cull also in the arts, because people will be like, well, nobody makes any money at the moment anyway. So, you know, you're either going to do this because you love it, or you're just not going to do it. Yeah. And so I think in a funny kind of a way, there is a huge positive in all of this. And I'm not saying it's because some people will fall to the wayside. I don't want that. I want everybody to survive and to get there. But I just think if your heart's not in it, this is definitely the time when you're going to break.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, commercial. Yeah, you've got a lot of sun on you, Glenn.
Am I bleached out?
You're bleached out. It's an artistic effect.
So maybe I'll change angle. Hang on a second. Maybe if the sun's behind me. Here, let me see. I've got this big steel box. Hang on. Yeah.
There he is in the barn he built today.
No.
Better.
I just helped a few friends.
Yeah, I mean, your description of being there sounded incredible until you described the back-breaking nature of it. Then I thought, well, maybe it's not.
Which I just love, because it's not about, what I love about this is it's not about me. You're in service to something else. And what I love about being part of this theater group is I'm in service to their vision. I'm not the director. I'm just pulling my weight. I'm the music guy. So basically, I sit at the side of the stage and I play music. I improvise music to their acting. And I've written a couple of songs for it, and I just sing my couple of songs. But and each night I break down my gear, I load up my truck, and I drive to the next village, and I help unload the tent. And it's lovely because it's certainly not paying any money, but it's just lovely to be part of something that feels like they're still trying, even though governments have shut down, funding is all stopped, no arts funding, and yet these people, the resilience is just so wonderful to witness. They just keep fighting. They just keep on fighting. Funding gets cut. They just keep going. You know, like local people were like, a lady handed us a check for €500 the other night just to say, I completely get where you're coming from. You've just set up in my village. I just have to walk out my door and come into your tent. You know, it's just a lovely it's a lovely thing. I always want to be involved in, and I love the fact that I can go play Denver or go play, you know, a big room and make a ton of money if I play a big theater. But there is something about that system that has been exposed through this that I have no problem with. You know.
Yeah.
Wow. You know, Woody used to play with some dance troupes. Some of the Martha Graham dancers developed a play, a musical called Folksay, Folksay. And there are some photographs of Woody playing there, but, you know, he met his wife, Marjorie, his second wife, Marjorie, in that environment.
Yeah.
She was a dancer with Martha Graham troupe. And, you know, the funny story about Woody is he would be playing for the dancers and he could never play the same thing twice, you know. So they were always crashing into each other because they got the wrong cues from him. And
Right.
so be careful
Wow.
of that.
Yeah.
So,
There's
Jaimee,
real beauty
oh,
in a sideman.
what's that?
So I'm just saying there's real beauty in being a sideman.
Yes. Yes.
I think that's been for you, Jaimee. I think that's been a real kind of nurturing element of how your musical life has grown. I've watched you since you were kind of getting started. I mean, you were already really good, but you were working with really great people, and you got to work with a lot with Jimmy LaFave, who was just a special artist to so many of us. And it's been a pleasure watching your music develop. And I get the feeling that, as Glen was saying, that a lot of that came from, you know, working alongside others and not just, you know, landing as the hot new thing and the big star, kind of all that sort of treatment. Is that true?
I guess, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of my, I want to have both, you know. Sometimes I actually prefer being a side person, being in a supportive role, than I do being a front person. I think I'll always write songs. I love writing songs, and I feel honored to deliver them and having that connection. But I just as equally, if not more, love, you know, singing somebody else's songs with them and helping them, you know, make that a bigger presentation or to bring that forward. And I love getting to meet so many different artists. And of course, you know, there are certain things I do with my voice when I sing with other people sometimes that I don't necessarily make it into the kind of songs that I write, or at least have written in the past. And so it's really fun for me in that way. And to, you know, sing with Kalu James, who's an artist from Nigeria, or, you know, just all sorts of different folks. And I feel, you know, we were talking about this, Gaucher and I were talking about this recently, but there's a story that she told about, you know, Marty Stewart, who was always a kid. You know, when I started playing, I was a kid and I played with my dad, and then, you know, and I love being, you know, in supportive roles for sure. But there's also something to this moment about, you know, where you're not the kid anymore, you know, where you kind of got to step up and really fully sit in the seat that you've been given, which is something that I started to feel, you know, after Jimmy passed away. And then I've had these experiences where I feel like songwriters that I'm a huge fan of and love are kind of pulling me up. It's like they see something in the work or in me or the curiosity. I don't know what it is. And they've, they give me their information, their tips, Peter Case sending me some of his favorite blues guys, because I don't know about the blues. I mean, just, it's kind of this weird thing that I think, especially since Jimmy has passed away, that I've been aware of. Like when you sit on stage with Emmylou Harris, like you don't play small, you sit in the seat you were given. And that's kind of a difficult thing for me. But I just saw this incredible film called Summer of Soul. I don't know if any of you guys have seen it, about the film, oh, Glenn, you would love it. It's, these series of shows that happened in 1969 in Harlem that were put on, and you see, Stevie Wonder is 19, Mahalia Jackson, Mavis Staples when she's young with Pop Staples, and a really young Gladys Knight, and you see all these artists who have been transformative, just, they don't know exactly what's going on, in that moment in Harlem, but they felt something and they rose. You see it happen with every performance. And there's a thing that happens in the movie that just broke me, where, Mahalia Jackson, has been asked to sing something, but they can't, she's not quite well enough to do it. And so she gives the mic to Mavis and says, "Can you handle this?" And that's the moment that Mavis I swear you see it. Mavis Staples fully steps into her, "This is a torch being passed to me" kind of moment. And I do feel some of that in my life. And as weird as that sounds, I don't mean it to sound arrogant or something, but I think there's a reason I've been kind of a Forrest Gump, in this musical world, and have been able to collaborate with so many people and meet so many people that have opened up doors of knowledge to me. I mean, even the Woody Guthrie thing, I think for a folk singer, I came to it pretty late. And the only reason I came to the festival the first time was because John Moreland called me and invited me and just said, "Hey, there's this festival happening in Okemah. I think you would like it. Why don't you show up?" And so I did. And then that led to meeting you and so many other people who have, taught me about Woody Guthrie and other folk music. And yeah, it's like a portal. And I like following those different roads down, and being a collaborator allows me to do that. I'm just still a sponge. I love music so much. I just want to soak up everything that I can about it. And if it's just me, it's boring all the time. It's way more fun to ride around with other folks. I get sick of myself,
Yeah.
Don't we all? Not you, I mean ourselves.
These are amps that are as acceptable.
Oh man.
Well, Glenn, there was something that you had said that I kind of want to point out here, but that I found really, really interesting. And that was, this is sort of like a make it or break it moment for a lot of artists, in that, if you're not really interested in the art itself, you're probably going to fall along the wayside. This is probably not for you. And that sort of ties into Jaimee's point. And that is, if you're not actually invested in this for the art, like if you're not willing to do the work, and if you're not willing to work with other people and learn from other people, then you've kind of lost the point, right? Because there is something to this idea of always being a student of the art itself, of always wanting to work with other people, and willing to be the person on the side, willing to do the hard labor of just putting up the tent and playing the guitar on the side, and that sort of thing. And I wondered how much of that work of being on the side, of helping other artists, how much of that work helps you build your creative muscles and pushes you to the next level of your own artistry, do you think?
It's a great question. Not one I've given a lot of thought to, but for the longest time, I've always felt like the light isn't yours. The when it's given, when the light comes to you, and it will come to you in your life. Sometimes it'll come once, sometimes it'll come 3 times, 4 times, several times. But when it comes to you, I sort of feel like my instinct would always be to deflect, not to push it away, but to sort of go, "Oh, have you seen this?" It's a bit like, and one of the great, if I could say one of the things in my life that I've enjoyed the most through receiving light. Now, when I say light, I guess I mean attention, or I guess I mean when the light shines on you, you know, is to be able to to feel like you're part of a community of artists,
Yeah.
and not just to sort of take it as, you know, I just feel, you know, I just feel, and of course we all have egos, and egos are healthy, and they're also really destructive. But I sort of feel like it's just really, really important to, you know, like, even like, I mean, to be, you know, just to be absolutely honest, Barry, when you asked me to take part in this conversation, you told me the name of the conversation was making music that matters. And I was like, dude, I don't want to be involved in that conversation.
Chicken.
I just mean because it matters to who, matters to you, matters to others, matters in some, because that, you know, I'm always wary, and take it the right way, but I'm always wary of putting a value on something beyond what it is naturally,
Yeah.
beyond what it achieves for others. And you know, like, I'm good at what I do. I can get up with a guitar and I can sing songs. I can do that. I can write songs. You know, whether they're the best songs in the world, or one day I think they're the worst, one day I think they're pretty good, another day I don't know if I ever think they're the best. But you know, it's just something about when the light comes to you. Just if you indulge yourself, you're in trouble. If you indulge yourself too much, you're in trouble. We're always in community. That's where art lives and dies for me. You know, you open every magazine, it's always going for the broody and the dark. It's not going for the hopeful and the light. You know, Steinbeck said it in Cannery Row, you know, when he was talking about, you know, Doc, the character in Cannery Row by Steinbeck. You know, the world seems to value this idea of generosity of spirit, and, you know, and honesty, and, you know, upstanding, hardworking people. It values that, but what it invests in is thieving, lying, self-oriented, you know, people. I don't know how we got to that, but I'm just.
Yeah, I mean, like, when I think about the artists too, you know, we've been fortunate to meet a lot of our heroes, but some of, you know, the people that I perceive to continue to make art that really continues to touch me and is wonderful are some of the ones that are not jaded, that remain curious.
Yeah.
I think curiosity is the
Yeah.
key to longevity in art. You can't be on a high horse to have that kind of curiosity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we just gotta stay open to and also, you know, it's all about bringing stuff through. You know, it's not yours. You don't own the light. Whenever the light comes near you, it's not yours. The minute you think it's yours, you're in trouble. You know, you're just channeling something in that moment. You're getting to experience it. You're getting a taste of something really, really deep. But it's not. It doesn't belong to anyone.
Mm.
You know, these aren't my moves. You know, they belong to everybody.
It's a beautiful way to look at that. I always think, you know, the Beatles were so enormous in my life. I saw them when I was 11, you know, and changed everything. And I've always just been grateful that their overall message was peace and love. Today's, we're taping this on Ringo's birthday, peace and love.
That's right. Yeah.
But, you know, they could have been about all sorts of things, but the real beauty of that moment to me was just that these guys met, it happened, and then what did they do with it? Well, they saw through it, but they played it as well as they played their hand as well as they could, and, you know, outclassed everybody, and probably always will. But there's something really sweet about that, the nature of the songwriting that came through those guys in the hurricane that they were in.
Mm-hmm.
That was a loving and nurturing sort of thing. And, I think it's still important to Paul and Ringo, and it feels that way to me. And I love that about the change that happened to music in my lifetime. I'm very grateful for it. I think it's been a big, guiding light for me, and for so many of us. Any other areas of exploration? Who's got something? Or are we full and satisfied? I'm full, satisfied.
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good.
Feels good.
This was beautiful, Barry. Thank you for inviting us and
Thank
facilitating.
you, guys. This is
Really a cool conversation to be a part of.
yeah.
No, and
Yeah.
thank you for having me as well. I do not, this is one of these things is not like the other. That would be me. So thank you so much for having me. I'm
Oh.
honored. Thank you.
You're my
Thank
secret.
you.
You're
thank
our
you for the
secret
great-
weapon. Sorry, Glenn. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying thank you for the great questions. Thank you for the very interesting insights.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we'll call it a wrap. Thank you all. Love to you all, and stay safe and
Thank you, Barry.
make music.